Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sales High Five Show, where we tackle the toughest sales challenges and give you 5 actionable tips that you can put into play to help you win sales more often. I'm your host, Justin Zappulla. I'm managing partner at Janik Performance Group. Janik is a leading sales performance company. We help top sales organizations across the globe improve sales performance through a variety of research-based solutions. I'm excited to share more with you today on today's topic, selling virtually. Let's get started. So why is selling virtually so important to sales professionals today? Well, as we all know, we've been thrust into this new environment, and we no longer can meet with our customers face-to-face, and we have new ways of meeting and connecting and selling with customers. And it's widely known that even after the pandemic, we're not going to go back to the way it was before. Who knows what our new normal will be, but a lot of research suggests that selling virtually is here to stay. So I want to give you 5 actionable tips that you can put into play right away that will help you sell more effectively in a virtual environment. In fact, some research that's been done lately, McKinsey came out with some research that said over 79% of organizations feel that their new sales model is here to stay. So I believe this environment is here to stay, and I'm excited to share more. Your first tip is your virtual stage. When you're on camera and you're connecting with customers virtually, you have to be aware of what your stage says about you. So there's a couple things to consider here. First is consider your background. Many can set up in their home and have a nice natural background and look at what they can see. Make sure that what you're showing is consistent with the brand and the presence that you want to deliver. Other organizations might do virtual backgrounds. Test these, make sure that it's clean and that it's crisp. But ultimately, what's behind you is a big part of your virtual presence, and it's important to get your stage right. Also, you have to think about the equipment you're using, your webcams, your microphone. Make sure that your webcam is at eye level. Make sure that your lighting is important. We don't want backlighting where you're drowned out. You'd like some nice light right in front of you to where your customers can see you clearly and also hear you clearly. So take some time, set up your stage, test it, see if you like it, and then make sure it says what you'd like to say to your customers. Okay, your second tip is virtual tech skills. It's more important than ever to be technically proficient when you're connecting with customers to ensure your sales calls run smoothly. So the first thing I think about are the virtual platforms. You have to pick a platform that you're most comfortable with and ensure that you know how to run that platform in and out. All of the features, chat, team meetings, sharing documents, you have to ensure that you know how to run these and you can run them smoothly. But you also need to know more of the platforms. Many times your customer might have a desired platform and you may need to switch to theirs. So not only do you need to know your platform that you choose, Zoom, WebEx, Google, many of the platforms that are out there, but you have to know a lot of the features on many of those platforms because just in case your customer wants to use another one, you need to be proficient in that as well. Another reason why tech skills are so important is this new environment gives us an opportunity to collaborate with our customers in a different way. So you have to be able to, on the spot, pull up documents, annotate, share documents back and forth, and do this, again, in multiple platforms. One of the advantages of selling virtually is you'll have access to resources right at your fingertips. You just have to be able to smoothly pull those up and go in and out between those in order to create a great sales call for you and your customer. And lastly, your now tech support. Your customers might have issues. Everybody's been on the Zoom calls or WebEx calls where cameras aren't working, microphones aren't working, people are dialed into the phone while also dialed into the computer, and you might have to troubleshoot and help your customers get comfortable so that way you can focus on the context of the sales call. So be sure that you have your tech skills down, be sure that you understand your features, and you're ready to help your customers when they might need it. Okay, your third sales tip is virtual sales skills. We're all in sales and we know sales skills are paramount to any sales call. But in a virtual environment, they're a bit different. You have to be aware of what these are so that way you can adapt and ensure that your virtual sales calls are just as effective as your face-to-face or over the phone sales calls. So let's talk about a couple things that are different. One is your energy. It's easy to get behind a desk and go through the routine of call after call after call. Imagine you're on stage and it's no different than an in-person presentation where you have 10 people sitting in a boardroom. You have to bring your energy. You have to bring your passion. That shows up on the other side, and it's a way to better engage your customers. Number 2 is body language. You have to be aware of the body language of your customers and also be aware of yours. When you're looking at your customer and reading their body language, one of the things that's important to do is to open them up, create some space for some more dialogue. It's better to use more questions. It's better to use more active listening skills when selling virtually, and to make this more of a dialogue. Keep a dialogue going between you and the customer. Another skill that's super important for selling virtually is eye contact. Many sales calls that I've seen, sales reps are not aware of where their eye line is. So be aware of where your camera is, and when you're talking to the customer, that's where you want to look. So that way they can connect with you the best. And even when your customer's speaking with you, that's where you want to look. You want to be able to have that eye contact, even though you're in this virtual environment. And what we see is many salespeople start looking around their screens. They're looking off to the right as they're pulling up documents, or looking off to the left, looking at their notes, or even perhaps you have multiple screens and you have your customer's face is over here, but your camera is over here. And you have to look at what that looks like. When you're off, your customer's talking and you're looking over here, and what your customer sees is the side of your face. So these are just some small differences, some things that are a little different that you need to be aware of. Having eye contact with the customer, so looking at that camera while you're communicating and while you're giving that presentation, and doing the same. And lastly is active listening. And everybody knows active listening is super important in sales, but in selling virtually, it shows up a little different. You want to make sure you nod frequently and smile often. You want to give your customer feedback that you're hearing them and you're paying attention. And again, versus looking off to the left and right, into your email box or pulling up documents, make sure that when your customer's talking, you're looking right in and you're listening. The 4th tip for selling virtually is virtual presence. So this is how you show up to your customers. And while your stage and your background has something to do with this, more specifically, I want to talk about you. So first is your attire. Make sure that your attire matches the type of environment that you'd like to deliver to your customers. If it's normally professional, then certainly that's the attire that you want to wear. If it's casual, then wear that attire. But make sure that your attire is clean, it's neat, and it matches your presence. Second, think of this as your own personal brand. Your personal brand is how you show up to your customers, and most importantly, what you want to be known for. So take a look at your background, take a look at your attire, and think about your tone, your energy, and how you show up, and think, what does this say about my personal brand? The next part of having a great virtual presence is your online presence. Your customers are behind computers more and more frequently, and it's easier than ever to do research, to find your company, but also to find you. And one of the most common platforms that business professionals use, of course, is LinkedIn. So with your online presence, you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Make sure you have your professional picture, your bio, your background, and you show up the way that you'd like to show up for your customers. So take some time to research yourself, look at your online presence, and clean and tidy that up so it's ready for your customers. And not only do you need to think about your LinkedIn profile, but think about your other profiles and how you show up. Customers do their research, and you want to ensure that you look credible and you have a strong presence. So be aware of what's out there on social media and make sure that it matches how you'd like to show up to your customers. Your 5th tip for selling virtually is virtual planning. I know we've all heard that planning is important, but in selling virtually, it's more important than ever. So you got to think about your pre-call planning. Take the time to get ready prior to that call. Now, there's a few things that you want to plan for. Number one, you go through your routine of call planning, probably similar to what you've done before. You got to think about what information do I want to know, and how that leads you into what questions you might ask. Take the time to write out some questions and make sure you're prepared to deliver those. Two is what information might you share? So now not only do you need to know what information you're going to share, but also what resources you're going to use for that. Have those lined up on your desktop. Know how you're going to share them. So we all know with these virtual platforms, you have different options when you're sharing information. You can share your whole desktop, or you can share specific documents. If you share your whole desktop, you have to be aware of the things that might pop up. Notifications, email notifications, or other notifications that might distract. So make sure that you're smooth in going through documents and going through resources. So have those ready to go and have a plan. Make sure you understand how you're going to cycle through those. And lastly, what resistance might you face? What are the things that might come up and how are you going to handle those? And you think of these as your common objections. That's more routine, and most salespeople think about objections and their answers to objections. But I have a whole nother element with selling virtually that's really important, which is having a backup plan. As we all know, technology doesn't always work the way it should. I'll give you a few scenarios. What happens if you're doing a call and the internet goes down? What do you do? What happens if your camera doesn't work or your mic doesn't work? Or what if the customer can't get logged on? There's other options. There's dial-ins. There's backup plans. You need to know what those are. So if there are tech issues, you can't resolve them, what's your backup plan? It's no different than going into a sales presentation, maybe that you've done before 100 times, where you have 5 salespeople in the boardroom. Every salesperson knows you get into that room ahead of time. You test the technology, you plug into the computer, to your projector, you make sure that works. You make sure that the materials are there, you set them out. So everybody has the planning that you do normally in face-to-face. You need to do that same care with selling virtually, but they're just different. And many of it is relying on technology. So make sure that you have your backup plan. When things go awry, know what your progression is and know where you're going to go next so you can be ready to sell virtually. So in closing, let's review today's show. There's 5 practical tips that you can put into play in order to be a better seller in a virtual environment. Number 1 is your virtual stage. That's your background, and that's how you show up to your customers. Make sure that it's consistent with the way that you'd like to be viewed for your customers and for your prospects. Number 2 are tech skills. It's more important than ever to be technically proficient. You're going to be using platforms, a variety of platforms, to communicate and to share information with your customers. Make sure that you're familiar with your primary and also be familiar with the backups that your customers might use. The 3rd skill we covered was sales skills. Sales skills are vital to any sales call, but in a virtual environment, they show up a bit differently. Make sure you understand the differences between selling virtually and selling face-to-face, and what are some of the key things that you need to do to connect with customers in that virtual environment. Next is your virtual presence. Be sure that your personal presence and your personal brand shows up well for you and your customers. And when your customers are doing research on you and your company, that your online presence also shows up well. And lastly is your virtual plan. Taking a few minutes to ensure that you're ready for each sales call and you know what to do if things go awry. So some final thoughts. Sales reps who show up better in a virtual environment are going to have a significant advantage over the others. Sales has always been about adapting and evolving. And this recent change that we're all going through is a major one. It's changed the way that we sell, likely forever. It's important that you stay on top of this, that you hone your skills, that you improve your skills, and you give yourself the edge that you need to compete. And those sellers that sell better in a virtual environment are going to have a significant advantage. So happy selling. To learn more information like this, you can visit our company, Janik Performance Group, online at www.janik.com. There you'll find lots of research and studies, white papers, ebooks, articles that we continue to release on today's most pressing sales topics. I encourage you to go take a look and download what you'd like.